What if I told you the map of the United States was shaped not just by founding fathers, but by forces and leaders whose stories are rarely told in our history books? Imagine a nation whose borders, culture, and very identity were influenced by people who lived here long before the first European settlers arrived. Among these hidden architects was a powerful indigenous nation, the Shawnee. Their legacy is woven into the very fabric of America, yet their contributions are often overlooked or misunderstood. The Shawnee were not passive victims of history, they were grandmasters in a high-stakes chess match, dictating the pace and geography of a young America. Every move they made was strategic, every alliance carefully considered, as they navigated a world in constant flux. Their influence was felt in battle, where they fiercely defended their homelands, and in treaty negotiations, where their voices demanded to be heard. The Shawnee were skilled negotiators, often playing rival European powers against each other to protect their people and territory. At the heart of their strategy was a vision for a unified indigenous confederacy, a powerful alliance that could stand strong against encroachment. Around council fires, Shawnee leaders forged bonds with neighboring nations, seeking unity in the face of growing threats. To understand the Shawnee is to realize that America's borders were not inevitable. They were contested, negotiated, and fought for, sometimes inch by inch, with the Shawnee at the very heart of that struggle. Their actions shaped the map we know today. Long before the Declaration of Independence, the Shawnee were already seasoned diplomats and warriors. They navigated shifting alliances with other tribes and with European powers, adapting to new realities while holding on to their traditions and values. Their leaders, like the legendary Tecumseh, envisioned a future where indigenous nations stood together as equals to the United States. Tecumseh's dream was not just resistance, but a new kind of unity, one that could change the course of history. The Shawnee didn't just resist, they offered an alternative vision for what America could be. Their story is a reminder that the nation's foundation was shaped by many hands, and that the true architects of America include those whose voices still echo across its land. The Shawnee controlled the Ohio Country, a strategic crossroads that shaped the destiny of a continent. This land, stretching from the Appalachian foothills to the banks of the Ohio River, was more than just a place on a map. It was the heart of a vibrant world, teeming with life and possibility. The Ohio Valley was an ecological paradise at the heart of North America, its forests dense and ancient, its rivers winding like veins through the land. Here deer roamed in great herds, fish filled the streams, and the soil was rich enough to feed entire nations. Whoever held the Ohio Valley controlled the future of North American expansion, and for a crucial period, that was the Shawnee. Their villages dotted the landscape, and their influence reached far beyond the riverbanks, shaping trade, diplomacy, and the balance of power. The land's abundance fueled their strength, supporting a large population and a complex society. The Shawnee drew sustenance from the land, but also a deep spiritual connection, seeing themselves as caretakers of a living, breathing world. This abundance allowed them to project power far beyond their borders, forging alliances and defending their territory against rivals and invaders alike. Their camps and settlements were centers of culture, trade, and resistance. For settlers moving west, the Ohio Country was the promised land, a place of opportunity, where dreams of new beginnings could take root. Its fertile fields and open spaces beckoned to those seeking a better life. For the U.S. government, the region was a strategic imperative, a gateway to the West and a key to national expansion. Control of the Ohio Valley meant control of the continent's future, but for the Shawnee, the Ohio Country was sacred ground, a living entity to be protected, not a commodity to be bought or sold. Every river, every tree, every stone held meaning woven into the fabric of their identity. This fundamental difference in worldview set the stage for decades of conflict. As settlers and governments pressed in, the Shawnee stood firm, determined to defend not just their land but their way of life. The Shawnee fought not just for territory, but for the survival of their people, their traditions, and the heart of their world. Every battle was a stand for their ancestors and for generations yet to come. They knew that surrendering their land meant surrendering their future, their identity, and the sacred trust passed down through centuries. For the Shawnee, the Ohio Country was, and always would be, home. Every movement needs a visionary. Tecumseh was that leader for the Shawnee. He saw that only unity could save indigenous nations from American expansion. Tecumseh's radical idea, a pan-tribal confederacy, a permanent union to negotiate with the U.S. from strength. He traveled tirelessly, inspiring tribes from the Great Lakes to the Gulf with his vision. Tecumseh argued the land belonged to all tribes and no single group could sell it. His charisma and leadership earned respect, even from his enemies. Tecumseh wasn't just fighting for the past, he was building a new future. He dared to imagine indigenous peoples as masters of their own destiny. Behind Tecumseh stood his brother, Tenskwatawa, the Shawnee prophet, spiritual heart of the movement. Tenskwatawa's message: reject settler ways, reclaim tradition, and unite spiritually. This revival gave Tecumseh's political project a powerful foundation, turning resistance into a holy cause. Prophetstown, their new settlement, became a multi-tribal capital and symbol of unity. It was a vibrant hub where diverse nations gathered, planned, and trained. For Americans like Governor Harrison, Prophetstown was a direct threat, a declaration of indigenous sovereignty. Its success made it a target, setting the stage for confrontation. Prophetstown's rise was a bold challenge to American authority. The lines for a coming clash were drawn. The Treaty of Greenville in 1795 was a turning point, a forced cession of Shawnee land after defeat. The treaty's boundary, the Greenville Line, was supposed to be permanent, but settlers ignored it, pushing ever deeper. Tecumseh, present but refusing to sign, saw the treaty as a betrayal and vowed never to allow piecemeal surrender again. The U.S. government's bad faith and constant encroachment fueled Tecumseh's call for unity. Each new treaty eroded indigenous land, making a mockery of promises. The Greenville Line, meant to bring peace, instead sowed seeds of greater conflict. Tecumseh's movement was a direct response to the failure of the treaty system. Only unified resistance could protect their collective inheritance. By the early 1800s, the Ohio Valley was a pressure cooker, a land of immense beauty and resources, but also a region simmering with tension and uncertainty. The forests and rivers that had sustained native peoples for generations were now the front lines of a growing conflict as American settlers pushed ever deeper into indigenous territory, hungry for land and opportunity. On one side stood Tecumseh's Confederacy, a remarkable alliance of tribes united by a single vision: to defend their homelands and preserve their way of life. Tecumseh, a charismatic Shawnee leader, traveled tirelessly, urging tribes to set aside old rivalries and join together against a common threat. On the other side was Governor William Henry Harrison, the ambitious leader of the Indiana Territory. Harrison's land-hungry ambitions drove him to expand American control at any cost. He used every tool at his disposal: bribery, intimidation, and manipulation, to pressure tribes into ceding their lands. Treaties like Fort Wayne were signed under dubious circumstances, with many tribal leaders absent or coerced. These agreements transferred millions of acres to the United States, often without the true consent of those who lived on the land. Outraged by these betrayals, Tecumseh confronted Harrison directly. In a dramatic meeting, he declared that no single chief or tribe had the right to sell land that belonged to all native peoples. Tecumseh's message was clear: the land was a shared inheritance, and any sale without the consent of all tribes was illegitimate. His words resonated deeply, inspiring hope and unity among his followers. The rejection of the treaty marked a turning point. Tecumseh's defiance signaled that diplomacy had failed, and that resistance was now the only path forward. The confrontation between Tecumseh and Harrison was a point of no return. Tecumseh warned that any attempt to settle the disputed lands would be met with force. Determined to strengthen his cause, Tecumseh journeyed south, seeking to forge alliances with powerful nations like the Creek, Choctaw, and Chickasaw. He hoped to build a united front strong enough to halt American expansion. While Tecumseh recruited new allies, Harrison saw an opportunity to strike. He led his troops toward Prophetstown, the spiritual and political heart of the Confederacy, determined to crush the growing resistance before it could become unstoppable. Harrison's army marched through the dense forests, bracing for battle. The tension was palpable, as both sides prepared for a confrontation that would shape the future of the region. The Battle of Tippecanoe erupted in the darkness before dawn. Tenskwatawa, Tecumseh's brother and spiritual leader known as the Prophet, led a surprise attack on Harrison's encampment, hoping to drive the Americans away. The fighting was fierce and chaotic. Though the battle ended in a tactical draw, the aftermath was devastating for the Confederacy. Prophetstown was burned to the ground, its people scattered, and its spiritual center destroyed. The loss of Prophetstown shattered the movement's unity and morale. For many it felt like the end of a dream, but for Tecumseh, it was a call to seek new allies and continue the fight. The destruction of their spiritual home pushed Tecumseh and his followers into a new alliance with the British, who promised support against the Americans. This partnership would soon draw the conflict into a much larger war. The stage was set for a wider struggle, one that would decide the fate of the Ohio Valley and echo across the continent for generations to come. When the War of 1812 began, Tecumseh's Confederacy was already fighting for survival. The British promised support for an independent indigenous state, a buffer against American expansion. Tecumseh's leadership was crucial, helping secure key victories like the capture of Detroit. He was respected for both his tactics and his humanity, even by his enemies. But cracks appeared. Tecumseh fought for a homeland, while his British allies were less committed. After a U.S. victory on Lake Erie, the British retreated, abandoning the cause. Tecumseh, enraged but resolute, prepared for a final stand. The dream of a sovereign indigenous nation hung in the balance. The final act came at the Battle of the Thames in 1813. Abandoned by the British, Tecumseh and his warriors faced overwhelming odds. Tecumseh chose to fight, making a last defiant stand for his people's future. He was killed in battle, and with him, the Confederacy collapsed. The organized resistance to American expansion in the Midwest ended. The U.S. quickly moved to claim and settle the region, forcing tribes to cede their lands. Yet Tecumseh's legend grew, admired even by his adversaries for his courage and vision. His death marked the end of an era, but his story echoed through history. The Shawnee Kingdom was gone, but its leader became a symbol of resistance. The Shawnee story matters because it reveals America's history as a contested, complex struggle, not a simple march of progress. The Shawnee shaped borders, delayed expansion, and forced the U.S. to define its policies on land and sovereignty. Their legacy is written on the land, in names, borders, and the very character of the Midwest. Tecumseh's vision of unity and sovereignty still inspires indigenous movements today. The fight for self-determination and treaty rights continues, echoing the Shawnee's struggle. Remembering their story is an act of historical honesty, recognizing vibrant societies that shaped America. The Shawnees' contributions are woven into the nation's fabric. Their influence remains, a testament to those who dared to challenge an empire. The Shawnee Kingdom is an essential part of the American story.